The first part of this worksheet is going to help you learn how much pressure and how many layers it takes to create values with one pencil. So I've chosen blue. You can pick whichever you like. And for the one block here that says color dark, you're going to build your layers up slowly, making sure you clean up your edges and make them nice and crisp in color. You're not leaving any white spaces behind. And then you might also want to consider rotating your page every once in a while to continue building layers. You don't have to place a lot of pressure down just yet. The pencil should do most of the work for you. Changing the orientation of the paper is going to help you get any of the white spots that you are having trouble getting, and also cleaning up any spots that look a little off or uneven. It's nice and even now, so this is the part where you may want to once more or a few more times go through once again with a slightly heavier pressure on your pencil to really turn this into a dark color. You don't want it to be pressed in too hard because remember, we don't want this to look like crayon, but just a few more layers is going to make it look nice and dark. The next block is asking you to color lightly. So same idea behind the first one, but you're going to really take it slow and you're going to layer it very carefully until you get it to a nice, light, even hue within this box. Make sure there are no white spaces left behind. And if there's any patches, you need to make sure you correct them. The third block is asking you to create a two-color blend, also known as a rich hue. So you're going to need another color that's similar to the first. I'm going to pick my second blue from my box. This is the sky blue from the 12 pack. And you need to place this color down first and then apply your original color on top. So make sure that first layer, you have to be very careful. Make sure that first layer is nice and smooth, just like the second block that we just created, where you're coloring it in lightly, filling in the spaces, making sure there's no white areas because they will show through when you place in that second color if you don't address that. Once that's nice and solid, then you'll go in with your original color and lay that on top. Your circular motion is going to help blend those two colors together, and it's going to give you a different type of blue. So you can already notice a difference. The second block that we just finished, where it's asking you to color light, you can still kind of see some whiteness behind there. It's giving you a light value, but it's going to have a little bit of granular kind of white texture to that one without the blend. This blend, because you've placed down the color underneath, you've helped with that second blend on top eliminate the majority of that white space behind it. It's still a nice light color, but it looks richer and more vibrant. Yay, another value scale, but this one will not have the blocks. We're going to try and do this in a fluid motion, moving back and forth and working and building our way up. So we are going to try a value that goes from dark to light. You can twist your paper any way you need to feel comfortable with this, and you're going to begin by adding a heavy pressure, applying multiple layers. Notice I'm not worried about my edges just yet. I'm just focused on making sure that my value is going to transition gradually. So changing the pressure, changing my layers, and as I move forward, I'm going to lighten the touch on my paper. I'm going to use slightly different layerings in the middle as it gets towards the middle value. And I'm going to really let up on my pencil once I get to my lighter values. Once I'm happy with my gradient or my gradation, I then will go back in and kind of clean up my edges, and I'll show you what that looks like in a few moments. Less layers, almost there. You have to take this part really, really slow. Make sure you're still doing that soft circular motion so you can get it to the brightest value you can. So I'm going to keep reworking this a little bit more, making sure I'm getting rid of any patches. Applying a little bit more pressure in areas that I want to darken just a little bit. And I'm going to make sure that that lightest value kind of stays where I've got it. I don't want it to go too dark. Now that I've got that, I need to address my edges. So placing in that same amount of pressure and amount of layers is going to help you clean that edge up. So you have to pay attention to what you've placed in the middle and continue to add pressure and layers along the side on those edges to match. Only go as far as you need to actually make it match, and then you move on to the next section. Careful, careful, careful when you're onto this lighter value. Take your time, move very slowly. You need to make sure your pencil is barely touching this paper so you're able to match that value without overworking it and accidentally making it too dark. So I'm just going to go in one more time and clean up any patches I have, but that's it. That's what you do. We're going to practice the second bar, and this time we're going to go light to dark. And I think I want to choose a different pencil. I go with green. And I don't know, sometimes it's different for other people. Some people feel like it's easier on this worksheet to go from dark to light. This one was a little bit tricky for me going from light to dark. So that's why I wanted that practice for both scales. So you can see what that feels like to have to change the value in the opposite direction. Real quick, I wanted to show you, some people still make the mistake of going quick, moving left to right, and they're doing this in such a rushed way that it looks kind of patchy. You have all these white splotchy areas. It just doesn't look smooth. You need to make sure that you're still continuing that circular motion. You can move quick if you have this technique down, but you need to move your pencil in that circular motion, changing your pressure, changing the amount of layers to be able to get that value nice and smooth. So instead of letting up on your pencil and doing less layers, obviously you're applying more pressure as you go, applying more layers. I'm not so worried about my patches just yet because I know that I can correct them because I know that technique. I'm going to check and make sure that the value is how I want it to transition, and then I'll clean it up just like I did with the blue bar. I want to rework mine just a little because I don't think it had a good enough transition, so I'm just building up a few more layers and making sure that I have a true mid value that transitions to my lights, And I think I'll be ready to move on in a moment. The next one we're going to do has to do with that 2-color blend that we started on this worksheet, that third block up there. So you're going to need your 2 colors again, or if you want to change the color up, you can, but I'm going to stick with what I started with in the beginning of this worksheet, and I'm going to grab my sky blue again and my blue color pencil. Remember, the blue color pencil is what's going to be placed on last, and we're working from dark to light, so the sky blue is what I'm going to place down first. And I'll be changing my values from dark to light all the way through, making sure there's no white patches. Remember, it needs to be nice and smooth and even for when we place the darker blue on top. Okay, so now you're going to place in the dark blue, but I just wanted to show you real quick what it would look like if you did not make that blue underneath, that sky blue, nice and crisp and solid and smooth. You see there's a lot of scratchiness going on. The 2 colors are not blending well. Make sure before you move to this next step that you're doing that circular motion and you're making that smooth color before you place that blue down, so they actually blend properly and there's no scratchy marks on your paper. So I need to practice what I preach, and I need to correct any of the white spots that I left behind in my scale. And my dog's barking, excuse her, but I'm gonna go ahead and fill in these spots. Make sure I'm doing what I'm telling you guys to do. And now I'm ready for my dark blue. Going to begin from left to right. Excuse my dog. Moving with that same pressure and amount of layers that I did to achieve the value transition for my sky blue. Rich blends are so pretty, and we've just changed our values with pressure and layers. Now we're going to incorporate in the bottom scales cool color mixings and or complements to create your tones, and we will also be using white to create our tints. So I'm using my sky blue and my blue again for this scale. My primary color, notice on these it says primary, secondary, tertiary. Primary is red, blue, yellow. I'm going to stick with my blue, make sure it's a nice even coat, and I'm going to place my blue color on top of this once I'm ready. So don't be tempted to make this too dark because you don't know how dark you need to make it until you place in your tints and your tones. So I'm going to leave it just like that. I'm going to address my tones, and if I push my paper up like I want it to, am I going to show it? Am I going to show it? No. So what I'm trying to show you guys is that I'm going to place in the complement of blue, which is orange, to begin darkening my tones. So I'm going to actually put this color in all three because I want them to all look kind of similar. If I didn't incorporate orange in all three of these, they would not have the same type of hue as it darkened down. So on the paper it says you can either use complements or cool darks. This first example is actually going to show you how to do both. I could actually just use complements. I'm going to use both, and I'm just going to place in my orange, and then I'll go back and I'll start changing which cool colors I'm going to put as I move over to the darker tone value. Do not push these too far. We don't want these so dark where we cannot blend anything else in it. We may end up using up to 4 colors for our last tone. So every single value you place in at this point has to be no more than 2 or 3 layers, making sure there's not a lot of pressure behind it. We need to make sure that we have enough space and time, and less layers is better for you to do your blend. So just be sure you're doing light pressure, making sure you can seal all of that color that you just placed down, and you're not building it up too heavy, because on this one I still need to add one more. My first tone has my orange, my sky blue, and my original blue hue. So take your time, please. Work slow. Conceal as much of that orange as you can, because we don't want that orange to show through. This is helping us tone it down. So this kind of gives you an idea of why an artist might not like using orange. We'll find out later when we're painting, we'll be mixing our own paints. You'll notice that if you put too much of a color's complement in, it starts to desaturate that color. You can actually create a gray with the right amount of complement colors in your mixing. So it kind of desaturates it. Remember, we learned that word. It changes the intensity of the color. I don't mind it so much for this scale. I wanted to show you what it would look like, but just know if you want them to stay as rich as possible, you may want to avoid using complements. But I started, I'm going to keep going. The next one's going to incorporate a different cool color once I'm done with this. Before I start, I noticed that I can go ahead and layer that original hue down a little bit. Now I'm going to move on. I have my orange placed in. I need another cool color to darken this so it appears dark against the first tone that we created. I'm going to use purple. So I have my orange already. I'm going to place purple down in a moment, and then I'm going to end it off with my sky blue and my original blue. So when I say hide that first color, I definitely mean it. Make sure you are touching edge to edge. That's why you need to keep your pencils sharp so you can get into those corners. Now you're going to place in your two color blends, your original color blends, your sky blue and your original blue hue. The beauty of adding layers slowly and pausing for a moment to determine if anything needs to get pushed further is really amazing, really awesome, because remember, we cannot erase this stuff. So as you're working through your value scale, if you notice that the previous ones can be darkened down just a little bit more, perfect, do it. But I would do it that way, be strategic about it, so that way if I would avoid the mistake of going too dark too fast, because there's no way to lift that up and it'll just be what it is. So this last one, I am going to place down my violet. I want this to be a really dramatic dark tone here at the end. I'm placing my violet once more, concealing my orange, and then I'm going to go in with green, and then I'm going to end it with my sky blue and blue, an original blue. So this actually has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors. So you definitely need to make sure you are building this up slowly. Do you think I subconsciously told myself to zoom out a little bit in case I messed this up? So just if you're following along with me, just make sure you're placing in that even coat of green before you place in your blues. And finger crossies that mine comes out looking just fine. Take a moment and look at that difference between the first 3 bars that we created and what we're doing now in these last 3 scales. It really has a rich, deep value to it. It really makes a difference in what your artwork could look like. Both of them look pretty, but this is going to really push your skills. So now we need to create our tints. And I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here, but I'm showing a positive and a minus sign. Just showing you that for the hues, the one that's closest to the original hue, this one here, I'm going to make sure that that one has more layers than the ones that are towards the left. So I'm starting by adding 1 solid layer to all 3. And then as I move towards the right, I'm going to place 1 more layer to make that 2 layers. Make sure it's nice and solid. How many times have I said that? You guys should make a count. Person who gets the number right will win something. And notice if I have any white spaces, I'm just fixing those white spaces. Now this one I'm going to add 2 more layers to make this 3 layers total. If you mess up anywhere on this and you need to add an extra layer to it, just make sure if you're changing the layering of one, you need to change the layering of the other ones. just to make sure you still see that transition of value from light to dark. So I've got my sky blue down first, just like I did with the first half of the scale. Now I'm going to place in my original blue on top and doing the same method. One layer on the furthest one on the left, a second layer on top of the one I already did in the second one, and then I'm going to place 2 more layers on top of the third tinted area. Ooh, so that amazing thing where you build lightly as you go and go back and forth and change things up to correct and overcorrect and continue correcting and just keep correcting. I like having that option of always going back to push and pull some values. I noticed that my original hue looked a little too light, so I wanted to change that to make sure that my transition looked perfect. So now that I have those in, you could actually leave that if you wanted to, but I want to make sure that it looks as smooth as the tones I created, because I did do a lot of layer building on my tones. So that's why we're incorporating that tint. Also, just to give you an idea of what it would look like, because it's also kind of helping you blend those 2 colors together even more. And it eliminates a lot of that white, patchy, scratchy, staticky type of value that happens when you're only using one pencil to create a gradation of value. So we're on to the next one. The second one says secondary. I am going to choose green. Green, purple, orange are your secondary colors. The 2 pencils that I have in my 12 pack is yellow green, and it's just the same process as the first. I'm going to place down my yellow green because I want my actual green hue to be the main color on top. I am going to do this scale differently. For the blue one, we incorporated both complements and cool colors for it. For this one, I just want to see what it will look like by incorporating my cool color. So I'm going to finish this up. I'm going to place my original or the true green that I want to have here as my hue, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do for the tones in just a moment. So the complement to green is red, but like I said, we're not going to use complements this time. I want you to see what it looks like just by adding cool colors to transition to your tones. So I'm going to use sky blue for my first one. I know that our note said to incorporate cool darks. We're going to get away with using something that's a little bit lighter than our original color because it's still going to help you tone it down. And we're limited on what we have in our box anyway, so cool color is a cool color, right? We're going to use this blue, and now I'm going to place my yellow green on top, and then I'll end it with my true green. So the trick to this, if you're using a 12 pack like I am, I chose my sky blue first because it's my lightest cool color in the box aside from my yellow green. Well, once I get done with this block, I am going to select a different cool color that's a darker value in comparison to that sky blue. So I may actually use the blue for the next one. I may use a purple for the last one, just so there's also that nice transition of light to dark in those color choices I pick. Yep, that's what I think I'll go with. I'll go with the blue for this one, and I'll end it with purple on my final block. And I promise you that's my blue. It looks so different now that it's next to those rich blue colors that we've got, but that is my blue. Now I'm going to go ahead and place my green on top. Oops, I said my green on top. Last one, we are going to use what I just mentioned, my violet, and then I will end it off with my yellow, green, and green. Notice I don't really write these in any type of order. I just make sure that I have them listed so I know what I'm going to use in it. I don't place down my original hues because again, we need to make sure that we have enough that we can layer as much as possible. So if I put that green down first, I'm not giving myself the opportunity to apply as many layers as I want to with my cool colors, because you have to remember you would have to place your green back on top, right, to make it turn back to green. So what's the point in wasting that time and also taking away that opportunity to blend perfectly by adding those two colors more than twice, more than once? You know what I'm trying to say. You got me. I will do the tints for this one in a moment. I want to go ahead and address the tertiary. So tertiaries are all of your hyphenated colors that you see on your color wheel. I am going to use blue-green. What is very cool about this, if you are using the 12 pack, you need to mix your own colors to create a blue-green. Because of this, you don't need to add any more colors to make it rich. It's already going to make itself rich because you're placing in two colors. If you have the 24 count and you have one of the pencils that says blue-green on it, definitely, you're more than welcome to use it. But that means you, with your 24 pack, will have to pick another color that is similar to your blue-green to make your rich blends like you're supposed to. 12 pack, this is awesome. You don't have to. We're going to go and place down our green first because it's blue-green, right? Blue is the first word in this hyphenated word. So green first, then blue, because you want to make sure that it has a blue appearance because it's blue-green. I think you got it. Use your color wheel to make sure you're matching it how it needs to. It's not going to look exact, but I can tell it's turning into a blue-green type of color. I have shared with you what it looks like to add your tones using both complement and cool colors with that blue scale. For the green scale, I showed you what it looks like to just change the type of cool colors you place in to transition your tones. This last one I'm going to do is showing you just what it will look like if you use the complement color to tone down your hue. So I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to do one nice even layer in all three boxes. Make sure no white space is left behind, solid color. Now next box, this middle box, I'm going to place in a second layer. And then when I get to the last box to the right, I'm going to place in 2 or 3 more layers. So you'll see that nice value transition. Right now, obviously next to the blue-green, it looks like you should push it. Don't push it. This is just to help you tone down the blue and green that you're going to place on top of this. So do a few more layerings to this one because it's matching my middle one a little bit too much. And then I'll be ready to go ahead and place in my blue-green. So I'm noticing that some of my values look the same because I was a little bit too ambitious and I tried to correct it. So I'm fixing this one, but you're going to see that I don't fix the one next to it. The 2 that I'm coloring over right now actually look quite the same, but I'm going to fix the one in the middle by changing my pressure eventually once I notice my mistake. So right now I'm just going in and placing in my green, concealing all of that red-orange color. So just kidding, I'll eat my words. I noticed now that I'm finished with this, I'm looking back doing my wonderful voiceover that I did not fix my values to transition them in the correct way. So these 2 that I just overlapped with my green, they look very similar. If I actually spotted my mistake early on or even at all, I would have made sure that I either changed the value of my red-orange before I even placed this green in, or I would have changed how much green I placed there. Like you can see I tried to correct it, but my mind was like, oh, looks good enough. But I could have pushed it at least one more time for that middle tone to make sure that they did not look too similar. But anyway, I have finished my green. I'm going to go ahead and place my blue on top of these. Also, I noticed as I'm looking at it doing my voiceover that very last tone could have used a little bit more green before I placed down my blue, but I think it still works out all in the end. I think it's important for me to state this. Make sure you double, triple check. So I'm recording. I wanted to get this done on time so you guys can see how this all works for your assignment. You have time to look and check again to make sure that your values are where they're meant to be. You're not rushing for anybody else. This is going to take time. Yes, you see how long this has run so far, but you should have the time and patience to make sure that your value changes are correct. So that issue that I had with the value transitions, make sure you double, triple check that. Make sure you also conceal any colors that you don't want to be seen. I lucked out on this last scale because my blue and green is so dark that it conceals all of those mistakes that I made. You may not be so lucky if you choose a color like say pink or a yellow. Oh my gosh, yellow to create your value scale. So just be aware of that when you're moving through this stuff. So all that complaining I did, I think it still looks just great. The last thing I'm going to leave you off with is just finishing up my tints for both the blue-green scale and my green scale. Remember, you are changing the amount of layers that you're placing your hues down in. And I'm taking my time on this one. Instead of doing all 3 blocks at the same time, I'm doing 3 or 4 layers in this one, 2 layers in the one to the left of it, and then I'm just placing one very light layer in this last one. Do the same thing with your blue. Add increasing amounts of white as you move from right to left to create this tint, and you'll do the same thing for the green scale as well. Oh my gosh, so this is a long video, but I intend to not shorten this by speeding it up or cropping anything out. I'm going to keep it so you can see in real time what happens or how long it should take you, excuse me, to complete this assignment. About 30, 45 minutes. 45 minutes because I wanted to be sure to actually write everything out and pace myself so you can see what this looks like, how you get it done. This will be on YouTube, so in case you missed the lesson with us, we're going to be doing this together, but in case you miss it, it'll be on YouTube and you can stop it, start it, slow it down, speed it up, whatever you need to do to complete this. And I don't know about you, but I love working with color. I'm so happy that we're finally into color. Just take your time, have fun with this, and I hope you enjoy. Ta-da!